Had to mute for a moment while I adjusted the mic. So I'll come on the camera in a moment. And Robert, I did see that you would be lurking. Oh, hello everybody. Probably should have waited a little bit longer to put my camera on. So, let's see who's here. Fox Dre and Robert Elder will be lurking. Lee. Hello Lee. Hello Tammy. Raksha. Madfinger. Mari. Okay. And it's interesting, as you all know, I'm a member of a global mission of peace, and somebody counseled me. They said, you know, I like you have a nice style there on your live stream. So I realized that the people I meet with twice a week, I'm going to be real sweet to them too. I'm feeling a lot of sweetness, a lot of love, a lot of gratitude for people in my life. Hello hello Niche. And so I just I'm really glad that a friend of mine counseled me, reminded me. It was more like good counsel to that there's a few people that I kind of fall into a habit of, and that I should take the habit I have here and bring it there, and I totally agreed with her. So I look forward to greeting my Global Mission of Peace family on Wednesday. And also my friend the ambassador, the inspiration and the the person who made Global Mission of Peace happen. He is anxious to kind of get on some recordings and speak to people again, and I'm going to afford him that opportunity, and I look forward to it. And that will be on this channel. Hello, Jessica. So let's see what we have. I think an interesting show. Are you feeling it? And part of that is the Superlearning event, but we'll talk about the feeling part, because the feeling part is something that I think I know, because I speak to a lot of people, and a lot of it has to do with what has gone on in the last 2 weeks, especially since the new moon began, and Bhudevi and Green Tara have been on shift. And also go into the acronym of MOMMY that John Lash has put out, because it is helpful with being actively participating in these energies, these moods of the planet. Prism Do, hello. And so I would like to kind of explore that with everybody here, because where we can use the chat as a way to maybe insert, hello Deborah, to insert what has what we might have been experiencing in the last 2 weeks. Of course, we were 1 week into it last week, but now as the moon is shifting, it's going into its waning phase. In many ways, I think it is going to be a little more outward, a little more in the world observable, because many energies have been building, and now we're kind of on this waning moon. I think we're going to see what could be almost like a shedding into manifestation. Hello, Christian Martin. And so, as we know, I won't get right into it. I'm kind of developing what I'm hoping will be some interaction. Well, Gaz for Jazz. I haven't seen you since I was putting out ambassador videos, and I just mentioned the ambassador, Gaz for Jazz. And I approached him about recording one tomorrow, and so then it would be get up sometime tomorrow night if we do it. So I'm going to just, well, actually, I want to, as people come here, I like to kind of be there, but I'll go into my own screen just temporarily to help me get a little focus. So I really, my sense, my knowing, but I guess, you know, I will have confirmation of it in the ensuing 2 weeks of what has kind of been building. And in certain ways, I think we have hints and glimpses and intuitions of what has been building. And then on this other side of the moon, I think we're going to start getting some verification or confirmation. And it should be interesting, exciting, and perhaps even quite memorable. And these will be, even if they happen in individual countries, I think they will have, you know, worldwide effects, demonstrations. And but for anybody who follows what Q, this entity Q has been writing, I don't follow the discussions around Q. I have a link to where he posts, and I just read what he posts. And I have my own discussions with myself and friends, physical and non-physical, about, you know, a lot of it is actually just being aware of what gets posted there and then looking out at what happens in the news cycle and in the world. And so what I'm tracking there certainly seems to have some corollary with this lunar cycle. Green Tara is also known in planetary tantra as Wrathful Green Tara. Wrath, I think, is an interesting word. How I unpack that word, how I make sense of it, is wrath, from what I can tell, is derivative, or where we get the word ruthless. So one pronunciation of ruthless could be wrathless. And there's a certain, I guess in it, a derogatory interpretation that one could say cold-blooded. But it, just because your blood isn't hot, in other words, you're free of wrath, doesn't make it, again, only in polarized thinking is you're either hot or cold. What happened to warm? What happened to normal, you know, or the general setting that we sit in, which hopefully is neither hot nor cold, but some form of homeostasis, where hot and cold blend, because that is the nature of things. That would be like a thermodynamic. And so Wrathful Green Tara is about wrath, but wrath of what she protects. In other words, if you're in many ways of a mother of her litter, is guarding her litter, anybody who tries to do something about that will incur her wrath. And so I get living on a street. For us to be able to use language correctly, we need to do it in a way that is not dualistic or polarizing and allows us to work within the field. Just like an electric connection, if you hook a wire between a negative and a positive pole, the real activity is happening in the wire, not at the plus point or the minus point, but in where those 2 points arc to each other. I hope this is all making sense, and I think I will go back in and view the live chat to see if I need to. Lee says something. He says he wishes this stuff hadn't gotten so polarized, but things do seem to be smoothing out a little. I believe that smoothing out is part of our consciousness. We are getting it. I read something on Zero Hedge just an hour ago. 2/3 of Americans are no longer really believe in politics or the political divide. They're starting to see through not only the scam of the political system, but the schizophrenia of it. How can one people be of two opposing minds? It doesn't make much sense, does it? That's not very holistic. And I spell holistic with a W, because the other spelling obviously has a hole in its logic. And in many ways, holism is a religion. Holism with an H would mean, we don't use pharmaceuticals, even if that may be how the person that's suffering might respond best, or that's the only thing available. So holism is like a religion where you have the forbidden, where with a W, everything is about you have a variety of treatments in front of you, and then you have your person who will be treated, and what they prefer is a big part of it. So anyway, I just believe, with holistic needs a W to be holistic. Holistic without a W is almost a form of, rigidity, a religion, or, a closed fictional system. Yay, Koreas, yes. Yay, Koreas, indeed. My first wife was Korean, from Seoul, which is now called South Korea. But she was born before the division. So in other words, she was born in Korea, in Seoul, Korea. She wasn't born in Seoul, South Korea. And what created the division? The fuckery of, other powers, politics. And so I think the concept that the Koreas will become Korea again is a very beautiful thought to hold. And I think we should hold space for that happening. And of course, that is called the reunification, because for thousands of years, it was Korea. It's only since, I guess, 1953 thereabouts, when I was born, that the division occurred. And it's been terrible. It's been terrible to a very beautiful and distinct people. There's a reason why that people kind of went on to a peninsula away from mainland China, because although there was similarity in the cultures, there was something very unique. And one of the things I enjoyed looking at some of the coverage of this, is the native costume. The men have a very distinctive hat that they wear. It's almost like a wizard's hat that has had the pointy part cut off, but it's a very tall hat and has a very broad brim. You know, and the women have a very distinctive style of dress, where right underneath their breasts, like in other words, it kind of bunches right underneath their breasts, and so it's very easy when Koreans are wearing their traditional garb to know, oh, that's Korean, as opposed to Japanese or Chinese or maybe even Cambodian or Vietnamese. And having been married, and when I first married her, it was just her younger sister, Yoon's son. It's funny, they all had the first name. Yoon means honest in Korean. So I was married to Yoon Kyung, which means honest sunshine. Her sister was Yoon's son. I don't even know what sun is, but obviously if Kyung means sunshine, sun didn't. And then she had Yoon Hyuk. Can I remember the rest of them? No. I guess not. I remember Yoon Hyuk. The other ones might come to me. But she had her younger sister here. Her older sister and her family moved over. And her older brother, who wasn't married, came over. And her younger brother, Yoon Hyuk, came over. So, I was at dinner with the whole family, which was quite joyous. They laugh a lot. I mean, I missed a lot of it, because they were all sharing Korean, because some of them only spoke Korean. Only Yoon Kyung and Yoon Sun spoke English. And Yoon Sun was married to a guy she met in the army, and he was an American, and they lived on Long Island. But I got a real chance to sit with Koreans at dinner, and what a dinner with Koreans is like. And it is warm, effusive, laughing. They're telling jokes and just punning, and just an amazing people. So I just wanted to. This Korea news has a personal element for me. I see we're buffering here. Okay, all right, we finished buffering. So let's get your Raksha here. I like what Raksha said. It's there in the chat for you. Yes. And I'm very grateful to the other people who were part of Planetary Tantra here. Fox, Dre, and Madfinger just happen to be there. If there's any other Planetary Tantra people here and I haven't identified you as such, please let me know. And Fox, Dre has put in some information for those who are tracking the moon. That is interesting. And it's when you're doing Planetary Tantra, it's these little bits of intel are more than interesting. They're incorporated into the ability to interact with what is happening. Now, I see my picture has gotten really fuzzy. Deborah, thank you, Deborah. But at least I haven't been kicked off, so we'll just have to deal with what I would consider a pretty crappy picture. And I'm very grateful to the other tantrikas here for being in, not only joining the live stream, but also interacting with the other members of the community. And so this way we are all kind of learning together. So I actually on one of my statements I wrote some subject topics that I wanted to make sure I did not forget. And one of the words that I have written here is Promethean. And by Promethean, I'm kind of speaking of an act like Prometheus. And I'm hoping everybody knows, and if they don't, I'll just very quickly say Prometheus is the mythological entity that brought fire to the human species, the human animal. And the human animal is a good word, and I have it written here so I won't forget it, but I want to stay with the Promethean aspect for a second. The delivery of the term of Gaia awakening, the Sophianic narrative, has for the human species been a kind of Promethean delivery, in my opinion. In that, and this is where we can have fun, where when we kind of engage with Sophia's dreaming, we enter into a mythic world. And in that mythic world, we can, be part of the mythic scenery, or we can be mythic actors. And the delivery to us of the Sophianic narrative by John Lamlash, I would consider a rather Promethean act. If anybody disagrees, shoot it into the chat. And part of why I do give John Lash props, as we say, they're propers, recognition, acknowledgement, is to celebrate it. And that is one of the things that I think makes being a community fun, is that when somebody accomplishes something, you celebrate them. And as each person, and this is right now, the focus is on John Lash. He's accomplished quite a bit. But we will all be accomplishing things, and we all do accomplish things. And in our smaller communities, like the Moose Lodge, and the greater community that we have, there are people to celebrate. On the One Truth Forum I go to, somebody was very much part of the set making and painting for Lord of the Rings, or at least The Hobbit, and he posted some pictures, and he had said, I'd like to post more, but I don't want people to think I'm showing off. I said, you got to show your goods, or else we can't celebrate you. And then he kind of opened up and started sharing with the forum, and we all benefited from the fact that at least somebody in the crowd spoke up and said, please don't worry about one of us being butthurt because you look good for, put it out and let's celebrate. Treat us to your creativity and your efforts and your skills. So this is like the moment I just kind of took out to acknowledge the Gnostic teacher, John Lash. Okay, human animal. Instead of human being, human species works. Anthropos, which is the human species. And then there are the people, the human species that is currently practicing planetary tantra could be called the Rome. It's a word John introduced, so it's kind of, kind of a name of the planetary tantra tribe. The kind of, a subgroup within the anthropos or human species. But why I like human animal? The word human animal, when you think about it, and just don't use it, but actually kind of human animal, suddenly that word, for me at least, places me back into nature, places me back into the forest or the bush or whatever, in a sharing experience with all of the other animals that are in that forest or bush. Thank you, Foxadre. I do remember him saying that. But thank you for the reminding. This is what's so great. This is really what's wonderful. I just am touched. I might have been touched before I began everything, but this is extra touching. And so I like the word human animal because it puts us, it just, to me, for me, it puts us almost, thrusts us, slam dunks us back into nature. Peering out from the bush and, across the savanna, across the meadows, into the forest. That whole idea of being in an animal form, perceiving the nature that we emerged from. And that with the big frontal lobes, that perception has its own uniqueness as opposed to how a deer might perceive it, or a bee. Now, in certain ways, how the deer or the bee perceives nature could be, in certain ways, richer because there isn't much in the way of a lot of distractions. It's a lot about the data that's coming in. The bee's eyes allows it to see spectrums of the electromagnetic frequency that we cannot see. Most animals that are not human animals have very developed senses of hearing, sight, and smell, but especially hearing and smell. We can develop those, but we would have to use them, especially smell. Smell is something that I enjoy. I'm an aromatherapist. But even in, like when I was learning traditional Chinese medicine, part of Chinese medicine is the ability to smell your patient. And there are even certain parts of smelling, certain output that can be part of it, but just the ability to smell the person in front of you. Romance and correctly identifying who we might pair with better than others, I feel I feel and perceive is greatly enhanced by being able to actually smell them, something that in Western society is rare. And then when we do run into someone that perhaps we can smell, it might be in an environment where they can't practice basic hygiene. Because anybody knows you can come out of a shower and, you've just washed and soaped your armpits, and within minutes, if you go there, you will have a scent. There's nothing wrong with it. You're supposed to have a scent. But many people go, oh, I stink. No, you have a scent. Stink is a judgment. And there are certain people who we could judge as being stinky, especially when hygiene is not being met. Hello, RC from Australia. So, hello, RC from the future, and also Mari from the future. We joke about that because it's already the next day for them. Like I'm sitting in Monday, and they're sitting in Tuesday. Interesting how that happens. It's funny, if we had to give a date for the world to end, we'd have to give 2 dates. Yes, I do hate perfumes. I do enjoy essential oils, and in my case, I would use essential oils that would complement my scent. Very often putting sometime, on my wrists, over here behind the nape of your neck, where you also have a scent by your hairline, and even into the armpit general, to create a blend of the essential oil with your own musk, and therefore creating, and so it's not hiding it. It's it is a wonderful blend where the base, because perfume have a base and a middle and a top note in a well-crafted blend. So in this case, you use your own scent as the base note, and then if you add anything, you might add a middle, and sometimes you can get away with just a middle, especially if you want to be more yourself. And then you can add a high note well, sometimes certain high notes can really make it interesting. Two scents you never want to blend is peppermint and jasmine. Boy, did I find it out. Because there is a chemical in jasmine called indole, I-N-D-O-L-E. And indole is also one of the, there's a trace amount of indole in jasmine. There's a lot of indole in human excrement. It's kind of the smell, the classic smells like shit. That's indole telling you that. So one time I put on some jasmine, and I went, oh, let me kind of make it lively with some peppermint. I don't know what it was, but the peppermint seemed to stomp on all the middle and high notes and other notes of the jasmine, leaving only the indole. So the end effect was minty shit. Don't ever, please. Don't. If you ever experiment with essential oils, I recommend not using peppermint and jasmine together. So the human animal, part of nature, sharing this planet with the deer and the frogs and the birds and the bees and all those wonderful companions we have. Last night I started a thread at the One Truth forum about animals as totems. One of the things I shared with Raksha when John put it out was when he put out the white bull moose as the totemic animal of planetary tantra. And so animal totems are powerful, and they're teachers. Of course, the primary teacher is the moon, which is one of the reasons why in planetary tantra, if we get in with the cycles, the lunar cycles, we will have teachers. This has been my first lunar cycle that I have gone out, observed the crescent moon, got what intel I could get, then learning more, and then from knowing who as I told John, because I shared with him about doing it and what had happened to me, and how as I stared at the moon insisted in me seeing two crescents kind of joined at the upper part, but as it came down they bifurcated very closely, very little space in between them. But no matter, I had to almost force my eyes to see one, and it took me more effort to see one than to just look at it and see that twinning, shall we say. I did not know. I told John I purposely wanted to go in there ignorant, because I wanted to have, I wanted to have whatever I came, not from being spoken to, so to speak. So the two things I got, and I think I've mentioned this, was the two and the impulse to go in and do some music. Unfortunately, the tape that I thought I could work from had farty bass on it, and there was nothing to rescue there. This time has been a super learning event for me. That's why that's in the title. And I really would recommend people, please, go to Ginny Thwaites' channel if you want. You can go to Mandela Effect Decoded, and please listen to John. If you really want to participate in Sophia's correction, being being part of her moods. And that's why we're going to get into his new acronym, MOMMY. And I think I went through this last week, but repetition sometimes is helpful. So MOMMY is the method of memory, mind, ideation, and entrainment, or modus operandi. Her modus operandi. And memory, mind, ideation, and entrainment. And the entrainment, I like to start as I get out of bed. And I'm getting better at it. But the last 2 weeks have been intense, personally. A bit of, I don't know if I don't want to use the word incorrectly, but I would say I was experiencing mythophrenia. It was interesting. It was what could almost be called manic stages. Manic because of the inspiration coming in, and then saying, "Oh man, I gotta act on this." But the beauty of this is, although there was a manic phase, there was no depressive phase. There was a rest phase. So it was kind of like manic, rest, manic, rest. And that's a nice kind of healthy manic or mythophrenic state of mind. Last night I thought I was going to record the Goob song, and I'm writing the words so I can read them really easy. So not only did I kind of screw up the words, but as I'm going, okay, I guess I got to start this again, I kind of get this hit where it's not time yet. It is not time. I mean, this is going to be, just me playing guitar, not like a big recording. Because if I get a real proper recordings, I think I might want to do something remunerative with it. Like the ones that take hours to put out one song. But this, to put out, like me putting on a guitar, a good recording, doing it live onto a screen. That's just promotion, and it's also getting it out there and sharing the in this case kind of like the bardic mockery. And I got a very clear hit. This is not a good time for that. Not for that song. Other songs, yes. That song that I thought was the one to put out, I got instruction that not yet. So not yet. I don't know if I greeted you yet, Robin. So, hello. So that's the Superlearning event comes with instruction. And so, so getting the song together, getting it in a very readable format, one that when I kind of get the signal to go, it's ready to go, and I don't have to sit there and write it out, because that, this way here, it can be real fresh. This Superlearning event comes with real instruction once you kind of get tuned into that frequency. And I is my experience now, after doing my first planetary tantra working with the Dakinis, absolutely amazing. And you are sharing with them. You share their inspiration. You're sharing the mood of the mother, because the Dakinis represent the mood of Sophia for that given moon cycle, that lunar cycle. Thank you, RC. Be well. And I also shared with John that this will now be a lifelong practice. I cannot. I'm not it's like, oh, I can't wait for the next new moon. That would be silly. We're halfway through this wonderful one. But that the whole idea of that, when this cycle finishes, there's a whole opportunity to tune in and participate in the next cycle and the mood of our mother. and how this allows her to work with us. I mean, this is, John and mentions many times, this is power sharing. And when you get into this power sharing, you find out what sharing really is. I mean, the inspiration creates this, manic or mythophrenic, state. I'm not sure if I'm using mythophrenic right, so just know that. I'm hoping. I mean, I am optimistic. My intention is to use it right. We have to remember, hope was the last fuckery in Pandora's box. And I think I would encourage anybody, if you have that free time, that 15, 20 minutes of free time as the sun is setting. It's like as the sun is, you can still sometimes see the sun, but certainly as it's, it's still daylight, but you can look in the direction of the sun, it won't be blinding you, and then look up, like a 15 or so degree arc or more, and see that crescent, and then just kind of just try to clear your mind. Being barefoot, I think, is a really good idea. Being very aware of that the ground underneath you is alive and intelligent and responsive and loving. And then looking at the moon with a clear mind and saying, basically, what do you want? Tell me what the mood is for this cycle. And I thought I'd come up a little dry. Okay, I had a physical effect, and I got a very strong impulse to go to work with my music. And then I came in, and as I sat down at my computer, I found that last Radio Gaianim video explaining that it was Bhudevi and Tara that came on, and that this was the anomaly of the lunar cycles when there are 2 dakinis instead of 1. So that insistence of and I spoke to somebody else who also said that they had the same impression of the moon, seeing the moon as those 2 slivers. So I encourage you all, if you have the time, if you have that 10, 15 minutes, and for yourself, because I guess the ability to do that, is more than, I haven't measured it, but from the time the sun is sinking until after the sun goes down, it's still there as far as what constellation it's in. Pretty hard to see, but even if we can't, generally, John will tell us, and then we can, and that's why he's the teacher. He gives us some intel because he has done this. He has the skills, and then we can take that and apply it. And for me, I thought I didn't know if I had any intel until he shared and who came on shift, what their energies were, and then I realized I had gotten some instruction. And it's, so it, well, it's part of Planetary Tantra Christian, and I would recommend, there's, the Mandela Effect Decoded is a website that has this. You can also go to metahistory.org and look up Planetary Tantra, or maybe in there it says something about the dakinis. I'm in the middle of, I'll do that towards the end if you're still with us. I think I did it last week, but on metahistory.org you can look up dakinis, D-A-K-I-N-I-S. The dakinis are the goddesses, energies of that make up the dakini cluster, and they are they constitute teachers or instructors. within these cycles. I'm not doing it as clear because I'm still learning this. John Lash is the teacher. That cannot be said enough. John Lash is the teacher. I know he wants other teachers to show up, and I guess when we have the skills, we can teach. Now we'll do our best to share and our experiences, and there might be some teachable moments there, but that we all can teach each other. That's how humans are. Humans do teach each other, but the role of teacher is one of great responsibility, and one that requires requisite skills to instruct in a modality and format that is not only honors the role of teacher, but also an important part that John makes is there's a certain way that the human animal learns. And he got this from Sophia. And so he teaches in a way that we can learn best. And that's a skill. And he has that skill, and there are other of us who are working to develop the skill because it will be required. Myself, I don't know whether I'll be here for a lot longer or not. Same thing for John. So for a planetary tantra and for the Sophianic narrative that has now been restored to stay alive again, it will require that John can duplicate himself on some level. Thank you, Christian. And again, the teaching is really me sharing and doing my best to carry the information that John has taught me, but of course he teaches us all. And this is one of the things that I am grateful for with the Archontic technology and how we use it rather than it using us. People who are entrained in, as they walk down the street looking into their palm because there's an iPhone there, they are being used by technology. They are not using it. They are being led around by the nose in many ways. So the way before literacy and writing was invented, the way there were certainly glyphs, but I'm talking about writing, alphabets, and really pulled us into our left brain, which was something that had a good side to it, but as with anything, anything can be abused. But it really did kind of, I think, create an imbalance, and temporarily that imbalance could have been okay, because it's okay for something to get kind of hot, and then before it kind of melts down, you stop it, and then it will cool down, and then it might get too cold, and then you have to start the warming cycle again. There's nothing wrong with these variations. Well, Fox and Dre, it's not a dumbass phone if you're listening to this podcast. Again, you're using it. It's not using you. And that is the relation. That it's a matter of, to me, the proper relationship to technology. Whether we enhance our learning and interaction with each other, or it becomes a drug for us. And so if it becomes an addictive thing or an entrainment, it's using us. If we use it to connect with each other in ways that we couldn't, then we're using it. And that's the point I want to get to, is that the way these teachings began when the shamans were getting together of the ancient world and comparing notes, it was an oral tradition. I remember, I think it was a Kiowa Native American I watched on a video, and he was a couple of months back, and he was talking a little bit of their creation story. He goes, man, I'm just getting a little bit here. He goes, when I went to learn our creation story, it was told over 3 nights, with a fire in a teepee or outside, wherever, but it took 3 nights of people gathered together while a storyteller, and a storyteller is Somebody in those traditions would be somebody like John, somebody who has the syntax, who has the narrative, and because it needs to be told a certain way. And, 3 days. And so that's one of the beauties. I mean, I have Not in His Image, the book, where I can read it. We can go on Meta History and read it, but we can also go to the Ginny Thwaite, Hans Carlson, or Mandela Effect Decoded, and and also Gaiaspora.com, where both interviews and Gaia navigation audio tapes are there. And receive this teaching the way we did it for thousands of years, which was orally. So a big beauty. And before I got Not in His Image, if it wasn't 2018, it was late 2017. And I just wanted to own the book. And I guess there was some history that maybe I had not known before. Or let's say the Gnostic story, the stories of the mysteries. But to turn, like I have that light on behind me, to put on one of the many tapes that John makes and gives a narration, turn off that light, prop up the pillow so I'm a little bit upright, and receive the teaching orally. Yes, it is coming through an electronic medium, but it's still a voice-to-ear teaching. That is amazing. That is a real gift of this technology, something that we would not be able to do worldwide. And the Rome are very widely dispersed, and the anthropos that are still not yet identifying as Rome can become Rome by listening to these teachings. And it is really my favorite way of learning. And it is just beautiful. Ooh, got a little adjustment on my back there. So I'm just going to take a breather here. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put a little picture on camera. I have a picture of Kali. Now, Kali is an aspect of the mother. I'll wait for it to come. Actually, I'm going to stay off camera and not follow that. And I'm glad I pulled up this picture because I had remembered something about her attire incorrectly. I mean, there's lots of things. I picked this because this was from a website devoted to, Kali veneration. And I went to Wikipedia. They had a picture that I thought didn't do it justice at all. So Kali is part of planetary hygiene. She deals with the infections. And so what I'd like to draw attention to, if people don't mind focusing on it a second, is her necklace. And as you can see, her necklace is made up of severed heads. Or I guess a collection of pathogens. You could almost call it the memory of the immune system. Because the education is, okay, let's keep a collection of each of these pathogens so that we recognize them again. Well, I'm riffing here a little bit. But there's kind of a, I want to find a little playful way of addressing a subject that, has certainly horrified some people, and that is dealing with infection. Now, I don't know of a person listening that really has any real great qualms about putting a fungicide on a fungus, which will kill it, taking an antibiotic for a systemic infection, which will kill it, using a topical antibiotic on an infected wound, because it will kill the pathogens. I think most of us are like probably quite pleased that these things are effective and will rid us of the pathogens, which, if completely unchecked, could, I mean, gangrene is an infection. Although gangrene itself is actually the gas emitted by the specific bacteria that are breaking down the flesh. But needless to say, that infections before loss of life can result in loss of limb. I can't imagine anybody going, I guess I'll give up my limb so I don't have to hurt the infection. I mean, I hope I use the word, I am highly optimistic that is not a thought process that people go through, that they understand that when an organism is threatened by a pathogen, you don't have to, celebrate it, but you have to deal with it, or you might have to deal with your own death. All right, I'm just going to take a quick look. I'm not going to put my face on camera, but let's see what's going on here. There we go. Okay. So, I just want to, in a certain way, and it's a way to kind of do a little bit of a psychological runaround of dealing with pathogens. So, I don't know about you, but there are certain people, I'm not going to mention any names right now because this is public. And I think the time is coming, I'm going to want to have some Gnostic campfires, some Rome campfires for Rome and those who wish to know more, and sit with the Rome to see if they're down with it, they're up with it, they're with it. Where we can be really frank and clean with each other, because we, without scaring people off. But Kali's necklace, I think there's a metaphor and almost a meme where, even just for myself, like let's say I see somebody say something and I go, oh, this is one of the horror shows on this planet, the leader and facilitator and enabler of fuckery and death. Boy, that person would look good on Kali's necklace. So that's kind of like a little meme of to kind of, in many ways, almost sound playful. Oh, look at it, so-and-so said this, or so-and-so has been doing this. Yeah, they'd make a fine ornament on Kali's necklace, wouldn't they? Feedback? Okay, I am back, and I noticed that that there was a loss of signal there, so I don't know what part of what I said was lost, but that loss of signal, and there we go again. Well, I'll keep on speaking, but I did notice, okay, I'm back. I did notice that there was some loss of signal there. But in many ways, Kali's necklace could be a code. And so I'm just, tonight, wanted to, yeah, I know that you lost me. And in certain ways, I have a feeling that I don't think that loss of signal was archontic interruption. It was interruption into an archontic network, but I don't think it was an archon that interrupted it. I believe that there was almost like, you know what, you talking about that campfire? Maybe that's where you want to go with this. There are certain signals you want to send to adversaries, and there's other things you might not want to send to adversaries. Yes, I am aware of the glitches. And in this case, I'm quite sure they're frustrating, I know, but I'm going to trust that they are intended, let's say good intentions. But I just thought, you know, especially I know a lot of the feedback I get regarding what puts people off to the teachings of John Lash, not the Sophianic narrative, you know, the teachings that are part of the greater story, and specifically focusing on the Kalika War Party. That the Kalika War Party has probably been probably the most controversial or the most difficult part of John's teachings that have some people said, you know, I was with it until I heard that, and then I was gone. And so I think Fox or Dre, I don't think it was Big Brother. I mean, I know Big Brother is listening, but I think the interruption was more feminine, shall we say? Because we are being protected. We have to be protected, because if we're not protected, we're not going to. The Rome won't get very far now, will we? And then the Anthropos, as the human animal, the species itself, as it's coming into greater and greater coherence, will need to be protected, or it'll just be back to ignorance and hell. So I will put myself back on, but we'll just suffice it to say, I think there's something playful about Kali's necklace, and who might replenish some of the old ones. We'll leave it at that. And of course, the decision is hers, not ours. Although, I guess the Rome are certainly invited to suggest, because we are the ones who are enduring the abuse. I mean, the poor Syrian people, wedding parties in Afghanistan, Yemen, we have to think about the piles of bodies, the thousands, tens of thousands of bodies that, if they were not buried, would be stacked up. And when the Kalika Party does a threat display and there are no bodies stacked up, people get quite horrified. And I would say anytime that you hear a threat display and you're horrified by it, remember the mountains of dead bodies in the last decade from those who hate humanity and the earth. And she also, something, Mari, you just triggered me. She is also the destroyer of egos, and that would include us too. The ego that would that has trouble sharing, because power sharing is does not allow one to really shine a spotlight on themselves. Power sharing is about sharing. So you share the joys, the accomplishments, whatever those accomplishments are. And the accomplishment of a carpenter is different than the accomplishment of a warrior. Correct, Foxadre. Beyond trust the plan, be part of the active solution. So there's a little allusion also there, shall we say, to Q, who one of his sayings, or her, the entity's sayings, is trust the plan. And I spent some time sitting in on the 24/7 channel of We the People. It's been on for a couple of months now. And, you know, it's Q all the time. And at first they were usually in the high hundreds, occasionally breaking 1,000. Now almost any time you log in there, it's usually somewhere closer to 2,000, and sometimes can get to 4,000 and 5,000, especially after a Q drop or when Jerome Corsi's on there. And I see a certain brilliance in, shall we say, keyboard warriors, because as I read the replies and the mood and the intellect of these thousands of people, I'm really glad they're being kept off the streets. If there are good things happening behind the scenes, it would appear that it's being handled by people with skills, emotional maturity, not needing instant gratification, strategies, disinfo, buried into the mix because everybody is watching the Q drops. I'm quite sure the Rothschild family probably has somebody dedicated to what's Q saying now. So there's a real sense of Sun Tzu strategy, and at least it appears that way. I know some people think it's a LARP. I guess we'll find out. Yeah. I mean, that's why I stopped listening to Jerome Corsi. I mean, he was, and yeah, I don't want to, it's just, that's entertainment. And in many ways, I feel that these are people who, at least from what I'm reading of them, it's a huge crowd. Some have great emotional maturity, great intellect. Some have unimpressive intellect and even less impressive emotional control. And so, yes, Corsi is milking it. He's become a star. And but in many ways, the good I see to that is, especially amongst the ones who are really, it's like you wouldn't want to necessarily put a pitchfork in their hand. So I see it as a way to keep, and there's always new people coming in. So there are thousands of people who are learning more and more about just how dysfunctional, dirty, and corrupt government is. Of course, on there are some of them are still thinking that the left is wrong and the right is correct. But you see some people go, no, let's get rid of this whole divide and let's get rid of the schizophrenia. All right. And I fully support that. But, for those who are of divided mind, who are into polarity and duality and think that there's actually a good party, Republicans, a bad party, Democrats. I'm not on board with that at all. Not one moment. Criminals are criminals. Corruption is corruption. Political party, ethnicity, religion, none of that. All of that is distraction and emotional triggering. When the focus is on corruption, criminals, and their behavior, without any other coloring, or a black and white stick figure criminal. Okay. Again, no religious. None. No religious. A criminal is a criminal. Ethnicity, a criminal is a criminal. Party affiliation, a criminal is a criminal. We don't need any attachment to a criminal behavior and criminal activity. Let's keep it really concise and clean. Especially in public discourses. Really important. Very important that people are not triggered by things, because criminals are criminals, man. And you can once the criminal behavior is out, you have a criminal. Ugh. So, I did have a thought. I probably looks like I won't be pulling it off tonight, where I would maybe do an hour stream, shut down the stream. We could all take a 5-minute pee break or something, and then start another stream, so that when the videos themselves went up, they would be an hour long instead of 2 hours long. Although I have to admit, when I have a video that I'm enjoying, I like a 2-hour video. Sometimes especially I'm going to be using a video to kind of go to sleep. An hour video, sometimes like, no, is there any one like at least an hour and a half? Because a lot of times the first hour, I'm still still producing my sleep chemicals and would like a little bit more. I see Ellie has joined us. Hello, Ellie. I see somebody said hello, John. So I have to look actually I can look at my participants, I guess. Participants, yes. Oh. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 people participating in a chat according to my thing here right now. Although I have 15 watching is what it's saying. And the lurkers, hello lurkers, and I'm happy to have you here. I don't mind the lurkers. Because it's fine to listen. Lurking in many ways is listening, and maybe even hearing. So one can never find anything wrong with listening and hearing. So what else do I have? Okay, so the word mommy, the acronym mommy. And I just want to presence that one more time. The method of, or the modus operandi of her, that would be Sophia, Earth Mother, plenary sovereign intelligence, planetary animal mother, the diamond sow, VV. So anyway, her method of memory, mood, ideation, and entrainment. And what the entrainment is to her memory, mood, and ideation. And her mood is very much revealed with the crescent moon of what for the next lunar cycle, the dakini that has the shift is the mood. And then from that mood, if you're tuned in, you will have memories. You will get some instruction. We will fall into the narrative, which is really quite timeless. And the ideation, the pictures, the intention, what will be manifesting, or at least put into our hearts to manifest from that mood, based on that lunar cycle mood, and then the entrainment to her memory mood and ideation. And I feel that it rather apparent to me now, my first Dakini lunar cycle, and where the entrainment has become like in many ways part of how I move. And the last 2 weeks it has been different. The way I interact with the world and communicate with the world has been clearer, more inspired, and more loving. I find that sometimes when people are challenging, that my love can be held, because suddenly I am filled with ways to respond that can be anywhere from a little cutting, but always kind of humorous and loving. Almost like a way to, do a towel snap on the backside, and not too stingy either, rather than like in an affront or a slap. In other words, when people are challenging in one way or the other, there's like a humor to it. And it's a humor based in like a form of great compassionate intelligence. My problem with higher side chats for going to sleep is he always closes with music. So sometimes I will actually drift off and be in a really sweet, not full sleep, meditative state, and then he'll have a music that sometimes is really, he has great singers, and sometimes they really belt it out, and it'll jar me, and then I have to start my process all over again. So I listen to higher side chats when I have some spare time during the day. I cannot use a higher side chat for my final video as I'm putting myself to sleep, because the end song always jolts me. And I appreciate that he does that. So it's just on me. It's on me. I wouldn't be like, hey, you think you could get rid of that so I could listen to your stuff to fall asleep? He's like, well, I really don't put it out there for you to fall asleep. But he has some really good guests, and there are some guests that I like less than others. I would recommend any of the higher side chats that feature Gordon White. I think Greg Carlwood has had Gordon White on 3 different times, and they're fairly lengthy, and they're brilliant. Gordon White is brilliant. I just really like his intellect. He has a great intellect. I like his composure. He's playful. He can snap the towel, but he's not trying to leave a wound. And although his magic wouldn't be considered Gaian tantric magic, he can speak with some authority on magic as a practice. So I would recommend anybody. And then Gordon White also has a weekly, he puts out a weekly podcast called Rune Soup on the Gordon White YouTube channel, and I recommend that too. But if you know some of my recommended channels, I have Mandela Effect Decoded and Ginny Thwaite, Nox Mente with Jerry Cthulhu and Speculum Niche, who just put some things into the chat here. Trying to think who else I like. For the really good, there's interest, and then to me there are things where, after listening to these people, you could come away enriched. But the top of my recommendations would be listening to whatever John Lash puts out on his Mandela Effect Decoded, and always mirrored by both Ginny Thwaite and Hans Carlson. Hans is kind of the one who's gets the least traffic, and I don't know if it really bothers him or not, but he is involved, and he deserves some acknowledgement. Oh, niche is wonderful, but since I don't want to break out into some perspiration, we won't get into that too much. Oh, and Jerry is a good intellect, and a playful kind of puck type of person. So so let me see if I've left anything out here. So some of the names, so PSI. Now, PSI we've often seen as pounds per square inch, but in planetary tantra, PSI means the plenary sovereign intelligence. And plenary, plenary means complete. And often a plenum, a fulsomeness, and it ties in with the pleroma. So that's one of the acronyms that is planetary tantra uses to refer to Sophia, the intelligence of Gaia, the Earth, the living planet. So one of the things that in the video about the Superlearning event and the introduction of the MAMI acronym was recognition the Earth is alive, intelligent, and responsive. Those are not exactly his words, those are my words as I was taking it down. And now there was I guess it was James Lovelock. I mean, this is back in the 80s, I believe. Could have even been late 70s. Had put out, the Gaia theory. It was kind of the first public acknowledgement that the planet is like an animal or an organism and is alive and responds to what goes on it would be more how they would have phrased it, but of course for us it's on her. And so it lacked the recognition that the Earth is alive, intelligent, and responsible, but it was certainly a good start. And that's my end of my notes. And Speculum Niche, we call her Niche. She calls herself Niche. She also, Nox Mente is the weekly program on Wednesdays, usually at 9 o'clock, that her and Jerry do with their guests. Gordon White was one of their guests. And then she has an artistic side to her also, and that goes on her. Isn't it the Speculum Niche YouTube channel? They're often, a minute, 2 minutes, but they're evocative. And then I enjoyed that one you did with the guest, the witchy something. Well, no, in her case, I think it'd be more artistic. What I'm doing is autistic. But, right, the witch round. But I like to, and then we have Raksha Moose, who I have deemed autistic, AWE-tistic. He's like the full spectrum. And you really, I'm going to speak about Raksha moves for a few minutes here, or at least a minute. You don't know Raksha unless you take time out and join him minimally. On after he does a show, he'll have Google Hangouts, where it's no longer a public presentation, and we can just have fun and be personable. And because they're not teaching moments, they're pure sharing ourselves moments. And also, rather than him having a mic and a camera and the rest of us on the keyboard, in the after shows, we all have mics and cameras. So suddenly, we have a true dialogue where you can show your face if you want, but at least you have the tonal inflections of the voice, where so much can get communicated that can never ever be communicated in chat. I mean, there are things I could write into chat that could be received one way, and I could say the exact same words with the way I look into the camera and the tonal inflections, and say things that identical, absolutely word for word, and have completely different meanings or be perceived differently. We do. Almost not every one of his live streams does he have a Google Hangout, but more often than not he does. And it's usually me, him, and Robin. Very often when I'm sharing about Raksha, I'm sharing the Raksha that anybody could know, but often don't, because they see him on a camera in his teaching mode. He is a teacher. I don't call myself a teacher. He does. John Lash is a teacher. And of course, Raksha is not teaching planetary tantra. He's teaching the Moose clan Moose, but it's still mother based. He's more Native American, and his shaman is more the person in the community that administers to people in need. But there's a same sourcing. He is sourcing from our mother. We sometimes use different language. Sometimes I'll use my language, sometimes I'll use his language, sometimes he'll use his language, and sometimes he'll use my language, depending on what mood we're in. But no matter what language we're using, we're on the same page. Oh, I'm worse than you, Ellie. Much worse. I'm probably the worst in typos. Even when there is something about a keyboard, because when I write, I almost never, ever misspell a word. I'll look up from my keyboard, and I'm watching my fingers, because I can't look away and see what I'm typing. I actually have to watch my fingers on the keyboard, and then I'll look up and I go, come on. I was watching my fingers. I didn't do those letters. How do those letters show up there? So I have to be the worst typist. But there are some benefits to my bad typing, because occasionally I will, rather than correcting it, I'll try to get lazy. I'll right click and use spell check. And if I put out what I misspelled into the chat, the average person would probably know what I meant, even with the misspellings. The fact that the spell check, hello, Seven Serpents. The fact that spell check very often, where there's just one letter missing, and the suggestions that spell check suggests for an omission of a letter in a word that would be obvious to any human, that's when I go, and they're trying to scare us with AI. Spell check is about as retarded as it can get. I mean, like I said, somebody on idle mode of intellect would probably be able to look at one of my misspelled words and go, oh, look, he left that letter out. He looked that. Spell check can't do that. And this is the big feared AI. Oh, please. And John Lash is quite vocal about the myth and the bullshit of AI, especially that Soph bot thing. I mean, Walter Winchell does a better job with Knucklehead Smith than this Soph piece of shit does. What a scam. What a complete mind fuck that thing is. But it's they're taking it out on the road, and a lot of people are oohing and eyeing and what, you know. And I mean, to me, even it's just sick. Ellie, I hope I have it underneath in the video. I have links to metahistory.org, which is the real body of his written work. And it's where you'll find the Sophianic narrative if you have not been exposed to it. And then if you're not in a reading mood and would like to have learn through the oral tradition, and I really like learning through the oral tradition, then you would go to Gaiaspora.org, and then you would have JLL, that's for John Lamb Lash, JLL interviews, because it's in his interviews that he will often, especially with Lisa Harrison, but others, that there were real tracks of him giving like a full delivery of the Sophianic narrative of the fallen goddess scenario. And then there are the GNE, which stands for the Gaian Navigation Experiment, that was conducted maybe one of the other, somewhere between 2011 and 2014, I believe. And those were when we were on a mailing list, and we would get these audio tapes from John. And it was those were some of the finest, that early development of my relationship with Sophia and my learning about her through John, and getting one of those emails, and then at the end of my day, and at that time I would actually often download them to a little MP3 player I had, and then lay down and put in some earbuds, and just have and learn the Sophianic narrative and the fallen goddess scenario and many other things, from like as if I was almost at a campfire, and there was a storyteller who was giving us our mythos, giving us our story, which is the story of the planet of Gaia. I'm glad you were able to join us, Seven Serpents. Seven Serpents also has a YouTube channel. He follows Gnostic thought. I'm not sure what, because there's also the Nag Hammadi text, which I call Naga Gnosticism. Brothers, but it has other influences. It's kind of, I would consider the Nag Hammadi texts to be, as they're written, as they're presented in many tracks, and some more than others. Some are more exclusively Gnostic, but overall there's a lot. I would call it a Judeo-Christo-Gnostic mix. And that's where a lot of people kind of get their Gnostic concepts from. Miguel Connor has a website called Aeon Gnostic Bites. One of his videos does have John Lash on, and I think a year or so ago, easily. And I found it interesting that Miguel Connor, who calls himself a Gnostic, could sit with John Lash and then have John Lash just be another guest, as opposed to that he sat with the intended. And for me, he was intended to be the one that would do all of the work of reclaiming and rebuilding the fallen goddess scenario and the original and the Sophianic narrative, as opposed to the you know, the parts and bits that are distributed in different ways in the Nag Hammadi texts. I mean, one of the big ones is Pistis Sophia, and the Pistis Sophia starts out to me in a very Gnostic way, and then there's kind of like a big block, and then a third, you know, other blocks, and around the third block, it starts having what I would consider to be very non-Gnostic insertions. It's almost as if like they start out with Sophia, and you know, so this, and I think a lot of it was also there were certain let's say some of the other strains of thought that were relatively new to the planet at that time, some newer than others. Some had about 1,000 years maybe ahead of them, and some of them had just begun around what we now call, you know, the beginning of the AD period. And so in many ways, it was almost like, we'd like to get the Gnostics involved in what we're doing here. So I kind of see the Pistis Sophia as starting out where any person who had a basic understanding of Gnostic teachings would go there and go, oh, yes, this is familiar, yeah. And then the text kind of starts changing. And I think, you know, it starts to zig and zag, I'll say. Oh, Ellie, this is about coming and feeling the love and participating. And if you have one piece of this, the people, everybody else here, you know, and especially now that we have some of the, you know, other Rome here, as Mad Finger, and I'm in a little bit of a trance state when I'm doing this, so I'm a little bit. There were 3 declared Rome here, and there might be more. And they have been the whole community is loving, and this here is about us all. It's like, oh, you don't know something? Well, then what do you want from us? What do you want from me? Whatever. It's beautiful. It is really an amazingly wonderful. Greater community. This is, I'm kind of handling the, you know, the Gnostic side, or the side of our community that finds the Gnostic focus interesting, minimally, and some of us it's more than interesting. It's our life, and so it's nice to just mix it up, because there is, you see the compassion that comes with being on this path. There is great compassion, and the gnosis would be empty without love and compassion. And compassion is one of the expressions of wisdom. And so, Ellie, thank you for joining us. And yes, Seven. I mean, you. That's why you're here, and you know, Hanuman the Ascended. Apparently, he doesn't want to be Doc Illusion anymore. But apparently, Hanuman couldn't make it. Thank you, Raksha. But I always ask, do not give me a thumbs up. I don't want a thumbs down. I would prefer not. But don't give me a thumbs up unless you think that it's thumbs up worthy. What Mad Finger said. The last thing he put in there. Most treatments of Sophianic narrative cannot resist blending it with Christianity. Gnosis is not from Abrahamic tradition and is distinctly different. Correct, and that's why I differentiate between planetary Tantra and the Sophianic narrative, and a very large body of people who do call themselves Gnostics, but I call them Naga Gnostics because of the inclusion of the Abrahamic material. And it's not a derogatory. It's a declarative. You know, it's like the Sophianic narrative does not contain material that the Naga Gnostic material does. Mari, I won't read what you wrote, but I have a feeling you are not alone. And you know, I guess he can come for the love when he wants to. Yeah, so I use the word Naga Gnostic. In other words, somebody like Miguel Connor, I would consider a Naga Gnostic. I would consider Hanuman, the Ascended, a Naga Gnostic. And there is one of the beautiful things about the Sophianic mythos, our mythos, the mythos of the planet, is we are writing it. Most of the other mythos have a creation story and an apocalyptic ending, including the Norse with their Ragnarok, which is not an Abrahamic tradition. Although, who knows if it didn't have some influence, but who knows. But the Rome, the Anthropos, we are the ones we have been waiting for, from 10 to 11, and we don't have an apocalyptic ending. We're in the middle of a story, and the story is continued. The mythos is one that is being written and extended as we live and breathe right now. So there is that is one of the big, huge differences between the very, very billions of people participating in certain of the mythos of their religion, and the difference, and the Gnostic mythos. The Gnostic mythos is dynamic, ongoing, and in many ways, at least for anything worth consideration, without end, and it has the end can't be written because we didn't get there yet. There's no plan. We're in an experiment, and once we become part of the consciousness of the planet, of the planetary sovereign intelligence, of the planetary animal mother, once we join in with her, now the mythos is a live, dynamic, and being quote unquote written, or turned into an oral tradition as we do it right now. And it is not, right, as Matt Finger put, it's directly verifiable. That's part of what Gnosis is. It's not based on faith. It's based on a knowing, an experiential knowing. You have met her at one level or another, even if it's been a whisper, a cosmic kiss, synchronicity. It is a knowing. Once you reach out, you will be reached out to, and it is not a faith. It is an experience. The mythos is to allow us to enter into it in real time. Many of the other mythos are written like a last will and testament, for all intents and purposes. Thank you for sharing that, Seven. I mean, and even if, I mean, I've spoken, I'm going to call him Doc. I've spoken to Doc. One time we spent, I guess, a couple of hours together, and there's a difference on those interpretations, and it's all good. That's what I'll say. Matt Finger, you're doing a wonderful service to us all in the live chat here. And the other, I guess here's a word that really does need to be presenced. At the core of the experience of being a Gnostic, of the Gnosis, is that it is an animistic philosophy. Animism is at the core of living in her dreaming. And that is something, and John does presence that. I don't presence it enough, because part of that living experience is the animistic perception. And it certainly makes sense, since we are a human animal, that we would practice animism. And I'm very, Raksha knows this. I am almost like stuck, almost pedantic about the word ism, because the ism has to derive of something alive. In other words, to me, an ism derives from organism. So if it's not alive, thank you, Raksha. If it's not alive, it's a fiction. And so any fiction most of the ists that belong to the isms, when you look at what they're ists of and what their ism is, it's a fiction. You know, it's a construct that isn't alive, that only gains any form of aliveness by the fact that it entrains certain parts of the human species to fill its emptiness. Communism is an empty can that only as the communists, I'm just picking on communism, as the communists fill the can, well, then the can might have some life in it. But as the concept, it was a fiction. It's a can. It's not an organism. I'm going to keep on speaking because I saw Ellie ask a question, and there's any number of people that can engage in that conversation, and what's good is that it'll also be in the chat. Ellie, you're doing fine. We're using the technology, and I know the frustrations, and especially I'm the one with the mic and the camera, and the people in the chat at the keyboards. So you have my compassion for that, and the frustration that goes with that. I participate on that side of most of the time. This is once a week for me, and of course when Raksha and I do our Mystic and the Moose. And let's see, well, I guess I'm looking at my calendar, and we have a full moon, and in our community, the full moon indicates that Nish and Raksha will be at any moment. It can happen, I'm quite sure it's planned, will be dangerous discussions. Dangerous discussions happen on or around the full moon. When the dark of the moon comes, on or around the new moon, you know that a Mystic and the Moose will be being conducted, and those are live streams. And and that's one of the ways that we in our own community are honoring our mother and our teacher, the moon, by using the moon as when it's time for us to do another live stream. Interesting enough, what day of the week did I pick? Moon Day. And so we, little by little, we are reclaiming who we are. We're reclaiming the planet. We're reclaiming our relationship to the cosmos, to the moon, to the sun, to the seasons. You know, our holiday. You know, if we and the, you know, like here we are. What this is the 30th. You know, so the beginning of May, Beltane. You know, and I'm very interested because, you know, Beltane is really happening right after the full moon. And I think the fires of Beltane might be a little fiery. There we go. Tomorrow night, May 5th. Dangerous discussions tomorrow night. You might want to put the time in, Raksha. Usually we do things at 9, but I don't want to assume. Doing a live stream gives me enough opportunity to make an ass of myself. So I won't assume the time. And then May 15th is Mystic and the Moose. Yes. So this is you know, we're kind of on the eve of one of our Earth wholesome days, celebrations, where we can wholly partake in these eight focuses of the year. You know, the 2 solstices, the 2 equinoxes, and then the interim every 6 weeks between them, and that creates 8 wholesome days. Or again, I'm not going to use a word. I won't say holy days because there's I don't like a word that basically means it has a hole in it. That's why when I use holistic, same thing. I mean, it's not like I'm picking on holy. It's just, it's there. Holistic, without a W, has holes in its concept because it throws things away that in a situation might be just the right thing to do because it's allopathic or pharmaceutical. And it's almost like it's not allowed. It's forbidden. It's demons or something like that. So anyway, but these, you know, these are the times we celebrate, and very often the veil, as they say, that perception, because it's not really a veil, but that perception between what our physical body can apprehend through the 5 senses, is limited by what frequencies we can hear, what frequencies you can see. And then on those times, very often, it seems like our bandwidth expands. And so there's an experience of the veil. And then it might even be a thing where, you know, certain energetics allow for convergence points. Well, Fox or Dre, I mean, I would love for you to, you know, I won't quite say expand because you're there, you're on a keyboard, and I would hardly ever want to ask somebody, you know, type out a whole bunch of stuff. But I would love to know more about that. There is a lot of, I would say, similarity in the Druidic traditions. That's one of the reasons I like Thomas Sheridan. Thomas Sheridan is just a hoot. He's not afraid to just blurt it out. You know, he comes from an Irish ghetto, you know, and he's a hoot. I think he's great. And if I recall, Thomas Sheridan and John Lash had done had done a show together on psychopaths. Yeah, pagans. You know, what's one of the what's really one of the interesting things. Let's the old wisdom, and you look like the three recognized great monotheisms. Although the Zoroastrians were also a part of that mix, which is why when they went into, in my opinion, when they went into Babylon, and then the Persians were in control of Babylon, it meant the Zoroastrians were in control of Babylon, and they recognized in with the Judeans, because it was the Judeans in Babylon, a common people, and that's why they helped them restore their priesthood. Probably much to the chagrin of the local people. From what I know of, Cyrus had to actually send not only funds but soldiers, because had the priesthood gone in there bringing their fun ways with them, they probably wouldn't have lived very long. It was like, you're back? Oh no. Oh no. But we do see in in things like the Kabbalah, you'd certainly hear the echoings of appropriations and new interpretations of an older system. You get some of that in the next movement, which is Christianity, because I mean, when you look, the Nag Hammadi texts are probably a great example of what early Christianity looked like. And then it became the official religion of Rome. And then you had 600 years later, you had Islam showing up. The people who I think treated the ancients, or it's hard to call the Greeks, what they were doing, pagan, because they were polytheists. They had a state religion. There was maybe little bits of paganism in some of the minor gods, but the major gods were not pagan gods. Those were, archons with archontic energies with different faces. And they threw out the ancient world as far as a body of knowledge, where the Hebrews and let's call it the Mosaic or Levite tradition kind of did some jungling and obscuring and hiding, and the demiurge's mother became a possible wife. There's all kinds of playing and fuckery with the old system, but the old system is part of the tile work. Now, in some of the texts, there'll be some Gnostic influence, because from what I can tell, early Christianity was very Gnostically influenced. But to their great credit, what brought much of the world out of the Christian Dark Ages, the ages of supreme ignorance, and the Greeks had already kind of figured out that the earth was round. The flat earth was brought back by the Christian church. Now, when I'm using this, every time I am talking about the systems themselves and the people who enforce those systems, and not individuals. So this way here, I'm addressing things and not people. And so to their credit, the reason why there was that flourishing of great scholarship and the reintroduction of the, Plato and the works of the ancient world, it was the early, let's say, like around the time in Spain where you had the Moors, where the the great universe. I mean, the original great universities were the mystery schools. The first flower of at least modern, shall we say, university type of styles has to be the Islam has to be given credit for that. They were not afraid to at least look at the works of people they called pagans, where the Christians wouldn't go there. So it's really, it's really interesting to look at those things historically. And, again, there's all kinds of people, and it's not, when I'm making these videos, it's not just about the live chat. There are people who could watch afterward. And so, we can be generous and compassionate, and still understand that there are systems, things that are very toxic. Very toxic. I would not consider Hermes Trismegistus a Gnostic. Any other Rome out there want to offer an opinion? And I'm what I try to do with these Can't You Hear Me Gnostic is have a Gnostic heart, and that is the Sophianic narrative is who we are and how we connect. But again, there is a larger audience, and sometimes there's the vinegar and honey approach. So I will occasionally pull out some honey. Okay, I want to just look at the participants and see if I still have. Okay, I still have Madfinger here. That's great. Wonder how I lost Foxadre. Maybe timing, or maybe I strayed. But that's again. I really want to have, and I have to figure it out. And here's what I want to tell people. Oh, there's Foxadre. Good. Yes, I agree. I mean, one of the topics that will come out in our talks is I want to discuss the Western magical and hermetic systems, and how they differ from Gaian tantric magic. Compare their two magical esoteric they're esoteric magical systems, and one is like the Western hermetic traditions, and then you have the Gnostic traditions, and they're different. And I think pointing out their difference and how you can tell the difference is a good thing to do. Yeah, that was one of the topics. John and I are still trying to coordinate what we're going to do. He's been busy, and interestingly enough, I mean, we had a schedule, and this has been quite a cycle. These two dakinis are just they're really roaring. I wrote somewhere about this on one of the things, and I kind of I put it that the dakinis are having their way with me, and just how it's kind of beautiful. I said, in many ways, it's almost like being a tennis ball that they're volleying back and forth. But that volleying of them knocking me back and forth in each other within that arc, basically they're doing it to keep me in play, like kind of in that lifted, almost mythophrenic state. And I said, you kind of have two choices. You can kind of, once you're in flight, you can kind of add your own English, And then even if you don't know how to do that, you can appreciate the view. Being tossed about by these two dakinis has just been an incredible experience. And there is, like, I guess, an official Mari. There's probably, an official definition of dakini, which could, depending on the source, could be really good. But you could go to metahistory.org and just follow the link below here and go there and look up dakinis. So, Ellie, I'm reading you saying this group feels so chill, feels so amazing. The last couple, I've even had people who are watching, people who watch everything I put out, and a couple of people said, your last couple of videos are really good. And I said, well, you got to check out the live chat. And I also, a good spirit entered me before the new moon, and then it's just been increased since then. So we have 2 more weeks of this shift with Bhudevi, aesthetics, art, balance, 4 seasons. I don't know where I put that. I kind of jotted it down. It's in the beginning of the last John Lash video with the MAMI acronym on it. It's pretty easy to identify because it says MAMI, and the Superlearning event. The early part of that, he mentions that it was on the 17th they recorded it, so we had just started the shift, and he gives a really good explanation of these 2 dakinis. Their special energies. So I recommend, and it's at the beginning. I mean, it's an hour long. To me, it's very hard to listen to even 2 minutes of John Lash and then decide I'm done. It usually there's a way he narrates and his voice that, to me, it kind of, once you start, you go to the end and wonder, how did we get to the end so quickly? And so if you want to know about this shift by the teacher, John Lash, the Gnostic teacher, John Lash, I recommend you go to Mandela Effect Decoded or Ginny Thwaite. They're on my recommended list. You can just click right there, and it's like I think the second to last. I think there was one that came after that, but real easy. MAMI Superlearning event. It starts out with explaining the shift, and it's really. It'll get you into it. It'll put you in, and if you haven't, you would be doing yourself a favor, in my opinion. If you have found being here, listening to me, and being in a live chat a really special event, then avail yourself of what's there. Yeah. So I think it's time at 2 hours and 8 minutes, which flew by. And welcome to Ellie, one of the new people here. And so next week, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, the next live stream of Can't You Hear Me Gnostic. Tomorrow night? Dangerous Discussions with Nish and Raksha Moose. And I guess that will be it. So enjoy the rest of the shift of this lunar cycle. Tune into it. This is a particularly beautiful one. Nature, Tara has nature, and for us, for the Rome, we can know her as Green Tara, as her experience. I experience her as Well, a big part. I did have some of her rage run through me, but it was, she let me feel how she feels about the people who were destroying the planet. And the fact that a running stream in most places, at least in America, is no longer drinkable. That's a crime. That is a crime. All running water on this planet was, especially in America, because by that Europe was pretty trashed by the time the trash from Europe arrived here. If water moved, any quickly moving water on Turtle Island was drinkable. That was a sign. You could drink it. If it moved, you could drink it. And yeah, as Foxy J, Tara is pissed. I felt her rage. I really did. But it was a rage that one could channel. It was, and it wasn't. It's a true rage, but it's not dirty. It's a rage based on absolute fucking criminality. It's a rage based on those who hate this planet and hate the Anthropos. Hate us. Yeah, I'm on camera, Fox Dre, and my face will change and get scary, if I let that in, and I don't want to scare anybody. Yeah, Mother Bear rage, and it's so right. It is so correct, that it's the proper response to that kind of behavior. So anyway, yes, as Raksha says, many love and many blessings from Clan Moose, and I am a clan brother. So, feel the wisdom in your heart. Feel the love and the compassion. There are other moods than that, but let's close on that mood. And let's just feel connected in our hearts, because that's where we do connect. We connect with her there, and we connect with each other there. And so it is. So I'll just do my best to smile as I stop the streaming,